This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.
Hello all. Once again, we're discussing everything to do with the Tyrell Corporation, Wayland Yutuni, and everything about the outer world that pertains to Blade Runner. So you've heard us talk about everything. The adaptation of Philip K. Dick's works that were in comics and movies, as well as other stuff pertaining to Blade Runner, such as the video game, some of the other comic books. But here we go, talking about K.W. Jeter's book trilogy. Now, again, K is a beyond established dude, and he has coined the term steampunks, which, very much like cyberpunk, but uses 18th century, industrial steam-powered machinery in a somewhat retro-futuristic setting. And yeah, Kay's been writing steadily since 1975. He's done a bunch of original books as well as original material like Dr. Adder and George Stour trilogies, respectively. And yeah, he's in the late 90s wrote a bunch of Star Wars books. He also, in the early 90s, wrote some Star Trek Deep Space Nine novels. Has even helped out in some other comic book works. Seems like his last few works were in 2015, so he's been kind of on hiatus for a bit. But much like James Swallows, who we've had on the show, Max Allan Collins, and Greg Pak, so many of these other tie-in authors. It's just so cool to see someone who has their original vision as well as doing a legit, just solid tie-in series. So we're going to decide if that's the case today. I mean, come on, this man has even come out with a legit sequel to H.G. Wells' The Time Machine called Morlock Night, so he can't be all out of his element, can he? And he doesn't shy away. He will have some occasional language and risque and violent imagery at times, so much to the times where it took him 10 years to even find a publisher for his Dr. Adder books. So yeah, he was authorized to do pre-sequels to the original Blade Runner movie, and I had to keep this all in perspective. I had heard about him for years, could never find a copy. Now, fortunately, I was able to find a PDF of all three. And it was interesting to me because this is all we had back then. These were published in 95, 96, and 2000, respectively. So, yeah, it didn't just come out like it was one of those where it was just kind of word of mouth. And it is interesting when you look at all the different fandoms, and Blade Runner's in there, but it's always kind of the in-between guy. So again, Deckard, Harrison Ford's character, is in all three. And I think he does the character well. He really does. At no point did I feel like, oh, that's someone else's interpretation of it, and yada yada. Now, lately, it's been the source of parody by Blade Runner fans because they weren't well received by the likes of, magazines like Entertainment Weekly. They always got some good reviews, don't get me wrong. And but yeah, the biggest plot hole, and this can't be helped, the special editions weren't widely available to everybody yet. But long story short, just like Sebastian character, for instance, that's a key character, led by what's his name, William Sanderson, and but yeah, he's Roy supposedly crushes his skull, and yet he's alive here. And so I don't know, I mean, the character even appears in the video game from 97, but I don't know why the author misread and decided, yeah, he's still alive. I mean, he was confirmed in dialogue as being killed, And yeah, in The Edge of Human, the Priz character shows up, but he refers to her as a human. And yet somehow Sebastian, the other supposedly dead character, is able to bring her back to life. So yeah, that opens up a lot of plot holes, and they're not the forgivable kind. It's just very hackneyed in that sense. But moving on, let's move on to the good. So I like how they have the niece of the Tyrell scientist guy, Sarah. She locates and hires Deckard to eliminate the final replicant in order to retain her corporation's bond over the market. But I like how when we first see Deckard, he's in a cabin with the frozen Rachel. In exchange for getting her back, he agrees to find the missing 6th replicant. And so then that's where it opens up, unfortunately, the other plot hole. It just can't be avoided. The final cut of Blade Runner removed that surviving 6th replicant reference, as it was considered to be a leftover line from an earlier script that somehow snuck its way back in. And it was one of those, like, in the original movie, it would drive fans crazy. They were like, who's the 6th guy? So... And to be fair, it was just inevitable because you have not only 3 different voices on set, actor Harrison Ford, the writer W. Webb Peoples, and Ridley Scott, all with their own opinion on what the material should be. And then with all the rewrites and reshoots, there's just still something that sneaks in that even the best editing can't fix. It just, the line was said, so it would drive people crazy. It's already... But it was forgiven because the movie was intelligent, well done, and so you could look past stuff like, hey, how does the other replicant sneak in a gun? So, yeah, this book is okay, but unfortunately it's very involved with trying to recreate the stuff instead of just get comfortable, and because it's needlessly convoluted, it's really going to only appeal to diehard fans of the first movie. You're going to be dead in the water if you have not seen the movie and you try to read this book, so I don't recommend it. But the exposition altogether, instead of being scientifically compelling or intriguing, is just drop dead uninteresting. So, yeah, if you're going to pick this up, get it dirt cheap. It's 2 out of 5 stars for me. Now, the third one. Yeah. Which is Replicant Night. The second one in this sequel trilogy. This is good. This is a highlight, I like how Deckard is now a bounty hunter who also works as a film consultant. More on that in the next book. And working with not only Ruth Tyrell again, but also her dad, Anson. And... yeah, I like how they're trying to adapt his story, so it's a futuristic, how they would be making movies in the future, and it's a bit of a prequel to the Tyrell Corporation. It's weird how they decide, let's bring back Roy's the human template that inspired the replicant in the movie. Let's have his personality reside inside Deckard's briefcase. Something that carries on, especially into the fourth book. It definitely, the whole concept of a replicant giving birth is definitely in the actual Blade Runner sequel 2049 a bit, but it doesn't get too weird. It's mainly, this is a 3 out of 5 for me. There's so much stunning detail. It picks up all the events very well. At one point, Deckard notes that someone in the crowd, their eyes look like someone who would have lived on Mars. So I felt like that was a blatant Philip K. Dick or Total Recall reference for a long time hardcore sci-fi buffs. And yeah, it was really just well-paced. He had Deckard down to a T, like just all that grit. There was some language, but it was earned instead of feeling like, hey, let's have this character act unnaturally. And so then the last book, Iron Talon, that concludes Jeter's trilogy, and it takes place concurrently with the third one again, so that's why I recommend it, because book 2 really ultimately doesn't have much to do with anything, but book 3 and 4, to dive straight into it. So, they decide to follow Iris, who's a different, much like Deckard, a Blade Runner, a gal who goes after replicants, and she's sent on assignment to find Tyrell's real owl, which appears to have significance to the corporations. And this is one where that was an animated owl that it was one of those, it was an animatronic, and it's another thing just from the movies. It was one of those, it was kind of an Easter egg. What does it mean, And one line in the movie, they actually say, "Do you like our owl?" And he asks, "It's artificial?" He's like, "Of course it is. Must be expensive." They're like, "Very." So it was cool to have that kind of very high value thing, just get some extra exposition, but don't worry, they don't spend as much time on it. That's just kind of the basis to set things up. Again, it's more just supervising, just languishing on what a neo-noir apocalyptic LA looks like, and again, having a Hollywood type movie in production in this future. However, despite some of that more vivid detail and picking up near the end of this book, still felt like a partially missed opportunity, but it was at least worth reading, especially if you liked the third book, Replicant Knight, second in this trilogy. I know it's confusing, but yeah, so skip the first sequel, Edgy Human. You really don't need it. And it's going to open up way too many plot holes and make you go, did they even care? And it's like, well, they did, but they didn't have, the internet at the point that it was, so research was limited. There was bound to be plot holes in a tie-in spinoff. And then, go after the second book, Blade Runner 3, Replicant Knight, and the third book, Blade Runner 4, Iron Talon, and you'll be pretty entertained, at least by the Replicant Knight, because, it was definitely a labor of love, and it really came across. So, can't recommend it anymore, guys. Unfortunately, a lot of these seem to have skyrocketed collector's items, so if you're going to go after these, hunt down the first thing at your thrift store and see if that makes a difference. Best of luck, and hope you enjoyed me raving and going crazy about these. No.
We'll return after these messages.
If you like small-town mystery, crazy news, and wild history, then the Florida Men on Florida Man podcast is for you. Each week, Josh Mills and Wayne McCarty bring you the absolute best Florida has to offer. So if you're looking for a show that's safe for the family, but funny enough to help you escape everyday life, then listen to the Florida Men on Florida Man podcast. That's Florida Men, plural, on Florida Man podcast.
Hey, it's Brent Pope, the host of Breakfast with Brent Pope. You've seen me on some of your favorite TV shows saying things like, "Give it up, Jimmy. You got to sink this putt to win." On Breakfast with Brent Pope, I sit down with guests from the entertainment world, and we do it all over breakfast. Or should I say Brentfast? Every week on Brentfast, you get inside Hollywood info and tips, great breakfast wrecks and booty debates. Most of all, you get the most delightful 30 minutes of your week. So dig in. It's Brentfast time. Listen at Brentfast.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
The Jacked Up Review Show podcast is honored to be part of the Blind Knowledge Podcast Network. Join anytime, talk the talk, and enjoy yourselves. There's something enlightening for everyone with this crowd of cool cats. Check them out.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a Jacked Up Review Show.